Hi, my name is Charlie Eason, or Miss E, and for my EDUC 630 class, I was challenged to find a new type of technology tool that I could use with my students and prepare a lesson around that. And I was a little hesitant because I know I love Nearpod and I love Kahoot, but one of my coworkers suggested that I give Quizizz a try because it kind of incorporates things that I love about both Nearpod and Kahoot into one site. I was absolutely pleasantly surprised with using Quizizz with my students. Before I used it, I did check with our math coach at school. I'm a math interventionist, and I checked with her to make sure that it would be grade appropriate for my second graders, and she gave the go ahead, so I was ready to try it. I created a lesson by hitting the create button, so when you do that, you can either do a quiz or a lesson. And also Quizizz has tons of pre-made quizzes and also lessons that you could use. But for this particular lesson, I wanted to create my own. And so it saves in your library. So this is the lesson that I created using Friends of 10 to add. And I can click on that. And when I was ready to assign it, it was very easy. You hit Start Live Lesson and hit Present, and it gives a code for students to put in. So this is a lot like Kahoot, which I'm used to using when we're doing a game or a quiz type of activity. And so it was really neat to have that feature. It made it super easy. None of my second graders struggled to get to the website or to put the code in and start the lesson. So that was encouraging. So I will go back here. It's easy to come in and edit something if you made a typo or anything like that. So I just have different slides. This is like our welcome slide. Just some review. And so one thing I did notice is on my students' computers, it put these facts a little bit closer together. So it was kind of hard for them to tell. So I see like that's what it looked like for them. So I'm not sure how I could change that in the future, but we went through it together. And just to note, my students are face-to-face, so that kind of made a difference of how I would use this virtually, but I'll get into that in a second. So we had some instruction slides that we kind of went through together. This was my I do part of my lesson, and then we did one together. And so I had some magnetic numbers on the board that kind of went along with this, because I made this so that the students could see their all of these slides on their actual screen instead of just presenting it on the board. And I think that made a difference too with how engaged they were, because they seemed to notice more things about the slides, which I thought was very interesting. We did some practice. And so my students got the questions. The questions were really easy to put in. You have a choice of what kind of question you want. You can always go back and change it later. So we have multiple choice, a poll, fill in the blanks, open-ended. Multiple choice is just kind of what my students were used to, so that's what I went with. And we did a couple of those. We did one together, and then they did two independently. And then we ended with a poll, because I just like to do that on Nearpod as well, with just how comfortable do they feel with that. And they love that too. They love the emojis and getting to kind of share how they felt with that. And I always just hit save to make sure it saves. So after using the lesson, like I said, things went really smooth with the lesson. My students followed along. They were engaged. Most of them took the time to answer questions. I did kind of mention, like, let me go over the question before you just hit an answer and that kind of thing, and that really helped them as well. So now that they've completed the lesson, I can come here to reports, and this is actually my favorite part of this app, because with Kahoot you do get like a percentage that they get right, but again, it's not necessarily like how I do check-in or exit ticket. I feel like for this type of lesson, this was a better tool to use, because the lesson is all embedded. And I know Nearpod can do that as well, but answering the questions seem easier for my students on Quizizz than on Nearpod. And I love that it calculates my accuracy right here, because the way we have to present our data in class is we track it for each individual student. And I teach small groups. So that's why I had 6 here and 4 here. But it tracks their whole percentage. So we have to display the class percentage. So it was so easy just to look right there and find that percentage. And then I could pull up each individual student just for their privacy purposes. Since I knew I'd be making this video, I just had them put their initials in. So one thing that I did notice was that it kind of includes, so if you do a poll, it includes that in their score. So then I did have to do a little bit more recalculating because technically the poll would not be part of their exit ticket or their check-in. But it is just kind of something for my knowledge to see how comfortable they are with things. So I do like that. I can click on each student. I can see which questions they got correct. I can see what they put, that they were comfortable, and that's pretty good because they got, 2 out of 3 right. So yeah. And then I can also go back and look at the reports from my other groups because I teach multiple small groups a day. One thing I did notice with this group was even though I had 6 students that completed it, one student, she kind of got kicked out, and so when she rejoined, they actually split her quiz into 2 different attempts, and so I had to kind of look at her questions there. But still, it wasn't hard to navigate. And then I had 2 students who had the same initials and did not think that one through. But I just had to kind of go through and check whose was whose. And that's where you just would want to pay attention to who actually got the questions right. So I knew which student had gotten all 4 questions correct during her attempt. And so it just made the data really easy to understand, though. So besides those things, I think this is a great resource to use. The only thing I noticed that I kind of would prefer, like if I were teaching students who were virtual instead of students who are face-to-face, is that Nearpod allows you to do voice recording. And our school pays for Nearpod, so that's another thing. And so for students who are virtual, I could see where using that feature would be really beneficial. But on Quizizz, you have to pay to upgrade to Super in order to create slides that have your voice over, kind of maybe explaining directions. And so just because 2nd graders might need a little more verbal direction, that's probably why for virtual students I would use Nearpod, because I could provide that and my school pays for that, whereas I don't really have the funds right now to upgrade to the Super. But for free lessons with my face-to-face students, I think that Quizizz is a wonderful option, and I will continue to use it in my classroom. Thanks.